Welcome to CBR, a vibranium arm and lots of psychological trauma. The Winter Soldier is unmistakable. Today, we are diving into Bucky's origins, both in comics and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Bucky is an iconic anti-hero on screen, paving his way within the MCU franchise to becoming a team leader and main character. But did you know that Bucky Barnes was among the first Marvel superheroes ever created, dating back to when Marvel was still called Timely Comics? James Buchanan Barnes first appeared in Captain America Comics #1, published by Timely Comics in 1941. Created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, the teenager nicknamed Bucky was introduced as a younger sidekick to Steve Rogers during World War II. He was born in 1925 and tragically lost both of his parents around the age of 10. He befriended Steve Rogers in the army and was later invited by Steve to become Captain America's partner. Curiously, he's one of the very few heroes who doesn't adopt an alias in comics, continuing to go by his nickname. Bucky, by the way, was a very common name at the time. During the golden age of comics, Bucky remained the enthusiastic and brave teenage sidekick to Captain America. They had a relationship similar to Batman and Robin's dynamic, even though their enemies often were much more global threats. Bucky fought alongside Cap against villains like the Nazis, Red Skull, and Baron Zemo, and he also eventually teamed up with other teen heroes as part of the Young Allies, a team comparable to DC's Teen Titans. The Young Allies first appeared in the Captain America comics in May and soon got their own series in July 1941. Bucky was the leader of the team, which also included characters like Toro and Knuckles. Bucky was an important Marvel hero until his death in Avengers Volume 1 #4, published in 1964, which turned him into a detail of Steve's past for several decades. At the time, superhero comics were shifting in tone, and the idea of teenage sidekicks began to fall out of fashion. Captain America felt more interesting as the leader of the Avengers, instead of having a younger superhero partner without any powers. Bucky's death also served as a poignant moment in Captain America's journey, as it reinforced the idea that Steve carried a tragic past. He remained dead until 2005, when Marvel radically changed Bucky's story with the Winter Soldier storyline, which started in Captain America Volume 5, #11. In it, it's revealed that Bucky had, in fact, survived his apparent death in that Avengers comic. Making the long-dead and forgotten Bucky, the Winter Soldier remains one of the biggest retcons in Marvel history. His sudden return as a hardened assassin with decades of covert operations under his belt brought a dark and complex plot twist. Because it has deeper implications than most other stories of resurrection, Bucky's comeback became one of the most well-received story arcs of modern Marvel comics. In the Winter Soldier storyline, fans learned that Bucky was found without an arm in the ocean by a Soviet Union submarine after falling off a plane that exploded as they looked for the missing Captain America in the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Bucky was taken and controlled by Department X, a covert Soviet agency that created and trained soldiers and spies. Bucky became the subject of the Winter Soldier project and was given a bionic arm. He had lost his memory, which helped in his transformation into an assassin. During his first years in the Soviet Union, the Winter Soldier became part of the Red Room, another one of Department X's creations. Bucky trained Natasha at the Red Room Academy, and it's revealed how they fell in love in Captain America Volume 5, #27 from 2007. The Soviet Union soon recognized Bucky's efficiency, molding him into a perfect human weapon and further manipulating him. As the Winter Soldier, he participated in numerous covert operations during the Cold War, eliminating political targets. One day, after an incident during a mission, Bucky was deemed unstable and put in cryostasis whenever he wasn't needed for a mission, which continued on for decades. He became increasingly ruthless and efficient, with killing and spying becoming all he knew. Bucky ages slowly due to repeated experiments with his body and cryo-freezes orchestrated by the Russians, but they never gave him a super soldier serum in the comics. The Winter Soldier is a brainwashed assassin with a bionic arm, but has no superpowers. The 2005 Winter Soldier storyline tells the story of how Steve Rogers discovers Bucky is alive. With the help of the Cosmic Cube, Cap was able to restore Bucky's memories. The good part is that Bucky reunited not only with Steve, but also with Natasha after regaining his memory. Black Widow assists him as the Winter Soldier and Captain America alongside Falcon and Sharon Carter. But Bucky also had to confront the horrifying things he had done while under Soviet control. Bucky spent some time in hiding but soon resurfaced to redeem his past. In the 2008 Captain America Volume 5 comics, he became Captain America after he read a letter from Steve that requested he take on the mantle, concluding the Death of Captain America storyline. Bucky Barnes' tenure as Captain America was marked by conflicts with Hydra and Norman Osborn. Once Steve Rogers was resurrected and took back the shield, Bucky went back to using the Winter Soldier alias. After having to fight the sentient cosmic cube known as Kobik in Captain America, Sam Wilson No. 7, from 2016, Bucky decided to create a new version of the Thunderbolts team. This team's main objective was to be the Guardians of Kobik and to be Earth's last line of defense against alien threats, and includes former villains or morally ambiguous characters like the mercenary Atlas and Abner Jenkins, also known as Mac-1. Beyond the Thunderbolts, the Winter Soldier has continued operating in the Marvel Universe as an independent hero. He remains a critical figure in espionage-related stories, often crossing paths with Black Widow, Nick Fury, and S.H.I.E.L.D. Bucky's redemption arc was carefully crafted over the years, addressing the implications of his past. Unlike other heroes who return from the dead without consequence, Bucky had to struggle to atone for his crimes in what started with one of Marvel's smartest retcons ever. Clearly, the MCU version of Bucky Barnes is not exactly the same as his comics counterpart. His story was heavily based on the 2005 storyline that made Bucky the Winter Soldier for the first time, but a few key elements in the plot are different. Played by Sebastian Stan, the character made his first MCU appearance in the 2011 movie Captain America: The First Avenger. This makes his one of the longest tenures in the MCU, probably only surpassed by Nick Fury's, who's been in the franchise since 2008. While his friendship with Steve starts later on in the comics, the movie made them best friends since childhood. Bucky grew up in Brooklyn and enlisted in the army alongside Steve when World War II broke out. While fighting overseas during the war, Bucky gets captured by Hydra. He's subjected to brutal experiments by scientist Arnim Zola until Steve Rogers rescues him. Back at the Allied base, Bucky once again demonstrates his loyalty to Steve, being proud of his transformation. Once Steve was given the serum and became Captain America, their dynamic shifted. Bucky no longer had to protect Steve, but their bond remained intact. Bucky serves as Steve's emotional anchor before and after his transformation. Bucky shares key intel about Hydra's bases, which helps Rogers and the Howling Commandos launch attacks. During a mission to capture Zola, Bucky is thrown out into a cliff from a moving train. Steve tries to save him, but Bucky falls to what seems like his death. However, Barnes actually survived the fall thanks to the experimentation Zola had performed on him. And it was Hydra who would make use of the man who would come to be known as the Winter Soldier, instead of the Soviet Union. They found him, wiped his memory, and turned him into their assassin. With a cybernetic left arm and intense brainwashing, he became the Winter Soldier. Over the next several decades, he was responsible for countless assassinations. That includes the murder of Tony Stark's parents in 1991, when the Winter Soldier was sent to steal Howard Stark's latest attempt at the Super Soldier Serum. When Bucky reemerges in Captain America: The Winter Soldier in 2014, he goes head-to-head with Steve Rogers. Zola gave Bucky a serum that made him Hydra's Super Soldier, something the comics also partially retconned in the 2023 Thunderbolts series, by confirming he has enhanced strength due to Soviet experiments. The only problem for Hydra was that Bucky's personality and memories proved difficult to fully suppress. To keep him under control, they used a series of trigger words and put him in cryogenic sleep between missions. However, seeing his childhood friend again created a path back to allow his lost memories to awaken. By the movie's end, Bucky begins to question his identity. Another interesting change to his origins that happens in the MCU is the disconnection between him and Natasha Romanoff. By making Bucky's transformation into the Winter Soldier related to Hydra instead of the Soviet Union, the MCU erased the entire romantic subplot between Bucky and Natasha that started in the Red Room in the comics. But maybe as a nod to their comics history, before Steve finally sees Bucky again, Natasha is the only person who can identify the Winter Soldier. Black Widow had been assigned to protect a scientist who the Winter Soldier killed. He shot the target through Natasha. She survived and tried finding the Winter Soldier to get revenge, but couldn't, not until he resurfaced to kill Nick Fury on a mission orchestrated by Alexander Pierce. Since becoming relatively free of Hydra with the help of Steve, Bucky's trauma and struggle for autonomy started to be emphasized. His following appearances focused particularly in his efforts to resist Hydra's lingering influence and regain his sense of self. Unlike Steve Rogers, who was frozen asleep for decades and suddenly awakened in a modern world, Bucky was forced into a series of traumatizing experiences in between moments of hibernation. He lived through these times under mind control, being unable to process it all, which created deep psychological wounds that would take years to heal. In the 2016 movie Captain America: Civil War, Bucky was a central figure in the conflict between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark when his past actions are revealed, including the murder of Stark's parents. Out in the world, without Hydra programming for the first time, Bucky chose to isolate himself, and Captain America and Falcon tried tracking him down. They finally found him in Bucharest after Bucky had been framed by Zemo for bombing the United Nations building in Vienna, killing King T'Chaka in the process. Bucky still didn't fully remember his life, and suddenly had to deal with T'Chaka's vengeful son, T'Challa, the Black Panther, for a crime he didn't commit. After regaining some of his memories, Barnes joins Captain America against Iron Man and his allies when the two groups divide over whether or not to sign the Sokovia Accords. Zemo reactivated his Winter Soldier programming, forcing him to flee. In the aftermath of that battle, T'Challa and Shuri agreed to help him find a cure for Hydra's brainwashing, giving him a new home in Wakanda. By the end of the movie, Bucky chooses to go into cryogenic sleep in Wakanda until he's able to fully remove Hydra's lingering control over him. Bucky later appears in 2018's Black Panther post-credits scene, when he becomes the White Wolf in Wakanda. During the battle against Thanos in Avengers: Infinity War in 2018, Bucky fights with the forces of Wakanda and other heroes like War Machine, Thor, Rocket, and Groot. Sadly, he was among the people who are wiped from existence when Thanos snapped his fingers using the Infinity Gauntlet. He returned to life in Avengers: Endgame in 2019, fighting in the final battle and later witnessing Steve Rogers' decision to pass on the Captain America mantle to Sam Wilson.
Trying on.
Bucky then finally got a more prominent role in an MCU project in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, released in 2021. The plot focuses on how he actively seeks to make up for his past actions, which leads Bucky to form a partnership with Sam against the Flag Smashers. His relationship with Sam Wilson is one of the most intriguing aspects of his post-Winter Soldier arc. The two clash at first, but over time they develop mutual respect and ultimately a reluctant friendship, coinciding with their team-up in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bucky's cameo in Captain America: Brave New World proves the MCU will keep their friendship strong, as it should be. In the upcoming Thunderbolts movie, Bucky Barnes is set to play a main role as the leader of the team. The Thunderbolts will consist of Yelena Belova, US Agent, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, and Ghost, along with Bucky. And their movie is set to be released on May 2nd, 2025. This version of the team is expected to be a government-backed squad of anti-heroes taking on high-risk missions that the Avengers wouldn't handle. Given Bucky's experience with Black Ops and espionage, he is an ideal leader for this team. His moral nuance and leadership style will likely be major themes in the movie. Thunderbolts offers an opportunity to explore Bucky in a way that he hasn't been fully showcased in the MCU yet, despite the character existing in the franchise for 14 years at this point. It will be exciting to see how he interacts with other morally complex characters and whether he will struggle with old habits as a superhero. This could be the start of a new era for the Winter Soldier, in which he manages to reconnect with his original personality. He will never go back to being exactly like the enthusiastic young man from Captain America: The First Avenger, just like he can never have his original innocence again in the comics since the Winter Soldier retcon. But now it's time for Bucky to overcome Hydra's manipulation completely and finally feel some sense of agency. By assembling the Thunderbolts, he may regain some of the optimism he had back when he enlisted in the army during World War II. Bucky is beloved by MCU fans, who are eager to see him take on a bigger role in the franchise with the upcoming movie.
And you are gonna help me stop it.
Wait, us?
Yeah, you. Why, you got someplace to be?
I love that guy.
Well, now that you know all the key information about both versions of Bucky, do you think the MCU was smart in making changes to his origin story? Let's discuss in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching CBR.